It's Wednesday, May 10. In the headlines, Information Minister addresses recent attacks on journalists. PMP apologizes for the incidents. In business news, Statin says Jamaica's trade deficit at new record. Regionally, CXC embraces AI technology to help students. Internationally, UK police regret Coronation Day protests amid rights concerns. And in sports, Jamaica Weightlifting Federation now on international platform. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simona Absalom Gale. The government is about to make an announcement of new fares in the transportation sector. Transport Minister Audley Shaw made the disclosure in Parliament on Tuesday during his contribution to the sectoral debate. The National Council of Taxi Associations, NCOTA, met with Minister Shaw last week to discuss a rate adjustment. Mr. Shaw urged operators to stick to the new fares when they are announced. Fares were increased by 15% in 2021, despite a request for a 30% upward adjustment. Minister with responsibility for information, Robert Nestor Morgan, has condemned the recent attacks on journalists at the People's National Party's headquarters. Reports are that a journalist was threatened by a supporter of the party. The Press Association of Jamaica has reported that 2 incidents occurred almost simultaneously at the PMP headquarters. Minister Morgan addressed the matter at Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief.
This government rejects, is upset, and is very uncomfortable with anyone or any organization that facilitates, allows, does not stop immediately any threat of intimidation against any media personnel in Jamaica. We see the media as our partners in informing the public on the important matters of state and of government.
There are also reports that media workers were chastised for the color of clothing they were wearing. Minister Morgan says as long as he is the Minister of Information and an executive member of the Jamaica Labour Party, such incidents will not be tolerated.
We have had incidents at post-cabinet press briefing before our time where journalists had their mics taken away and aggressive behavior was done towards journalists. That will never happen here. We believe in professionalism. We believe in accommodation. You will ask us tough questions. That is your job. Our job is to know the right answers.
Noting Jamaica's slip in press freedom rankings, Mr. Morgan lamented the impact this incident could have on future surveys.
And that's something that we need to spend the next several months trying to recover from so that it may not happen. But we will continue working with you as a government. Whatever concerns you may have, feel free. My number is always on, as you know, to reach out.
The PAJ has called for a thorough investigation into the incidents, and Mr. Morgan supports their call for justice to be served. Meantime, in a statement on Tuesday, the People's National Party, PMP, dubbed the incident as regrettable, adding that the incident does not reflect the morals upheld by the party. The party says it, quote, strongly condemns such comments and does not support any act of violence against citizens, especially or women, and will support any investigation by the authorities of this matter and are prepared to take swift and appropriate action against the perpetrator, end quote. The statement further quotes, the PMP unreservedly extends our sincere apologies to the journalist who was subjected to such abuse. We have spoken with her directly as well as with her supervisors. She has been assured of our commitment to investigating the matter fully and ensuring that the offenders are disciplined. The opposition also condemned the actions of its General Secretary, Dexroy Martin, who allegedly sought to bar a journalist from speaking to an executive because of the color of their outfit. He also apologized after that incident. Jamaicans will have to brace for continued water disruptions as the drought is set to continue for at least 3 months. The country has been experiencing less rainfall since October last year. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, responsible for water, environment and climate change, Senator Matthew Samuda, says data collected recently, although not conclusive, suggests a deterioration of the situation.
An analysis of the data comparing rainfall accumulated from October to the end of February would show that it was the driest period in Jamaica's recorded history when you compare all the weather stations. So that is what we are facing, and that disproportionately would have affected the East.
He explains that rainfall activity would usually increase in May, but that's not what's happening.
May is our second traditionally wettest period for the year. That is a problem coming off of reduced rainfall as we have had since October last year. We've seen where, because the rain falls disproportionately, our rivers and water systems coming out of the cockpit country heading into the west have not largely been impacted.
Senator Samuda says rivers in the east are being impacted.
Certainly your rivers in St. Mary, Portland and St. Thomas, we are seeing the hydrological impact of the drought, and it is indeed severe. Now, these rivers and underwater systems impact not just NWC, which is, as we know, a major supplier of potable water, but it also impacts smaller municipal systems that tend to be outside of what we would classify as a utility footprint.
Senator Samuda was speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief held at Jamaica House. Prime Minister Andrew Holness dropped by DuPont Primary and Infant School located off Olympic Way and Clancarthy Primary School to read stories to students as the country celebrated Read Across Jamaica Day on Tuesday. In a post on Facebook, Mr. Holness says he chose to read about environmental protection and encouraged the students to become environmental ambassadors. The students were engaged and asked thought-provoking questions, demonstrating their eagerness to learn and make a positive impact on their environment. He is encouraging all Jamaicans to take this opportunity to read to a child, share a book, or support a local library. Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
The Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, is reporting that the country's trade deficit reached a record of $6 billion in 2022 as the prices of imported fuel and raw materials surged last year in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to data from Statin, imports for 2022 saw an increase of 29.5%, and exports an increase of 28.4% when compared to the previous year. These increases are said to be the highest level ever experienced. For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, May 9, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.34. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.72. The pound sterling traded for $196.03, and the euro sold for $169.80. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by 3,014 points. The junior market index declined by 81 points. The combined market index declined by 3,556 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 3,226 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 110 stocks, of which 36 advanced, 56 declined, and 18 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and the Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 Limited, Cargo Handlers Limited, and Epley Limited 5% preference shares. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 5 million units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 1 million units, and Sagicor Group Jamaica Limited with over 800,000 units. In regional stocks in Trinidad and Tobago, zero securities traded. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the sole security trading over 20,000 shares. In regional business, Trinidad and Tobago is seeking to deepen its ties with Cuba, specifically in the construction sector.
Trinidad and Tobago is Cuba's main trading partner in CARICOM, and there is room for more business partnerships. This from President of the TNT Coalition of Services Industries, Mark Edgell, who spoke at a recent webinar. He says there are opportunities in the Cuban construction sector for local companies. According to Mr. Edgell, one of the key factors driving the growth of the construction industry in Cuba is that country's unique architecture.
In international business, U.S. stock indexes closed lower as investors grew more cautious ahead of a U.S. Consumer Price Index report and the looming debt crisis.
The Dow shed nearly 0.2%, the S&P 500 dropped roughly 0.5%, and the Nasdaq shed more than 0.6%. Worries of a potential U.S. government default hang over Washington. While the default could prove catastrophic for the economy, Phil Taves, CEO of Taves Asset Management, says he's surprised that investors have largely ignored the potential crisis.
The problem with the way people are perceiving the debt ceiling issue is that people make the simple statement that, well, we think that they won't allow the government to default. That's a problem in sort of understanding the implications for the markets, primarily because if you look back to the last time it became somewhat of a crisis, which is 2011, we also did not default on our debt, but we came close. So we came within 2 days of having that triggered. And during the lead up to that resolution, we saw the S&P fall 17%.
Investors have been much more focused on inflation, with updated numbers due Wednesday from the Labor Department. Meanwhile, more companies on Tuesday issued disappointing forecasts, among them PayPal, the company's stock sliding nearly 13%, and Apple supplier Skyworks Solutions, which shed more than 5%. PacWest had another volatile day, leading losses in regional banks earlier in the session before closing up more than 2%. And Boeing rose more than 2% after budget carrier Ryanair placed a multi-billion-dollar order for Boeing jets.
In market data for oil prices fell, ending a 3-day rally as an unexpected rise in U.S. oil inventories sparked demand concerns and investors waited for inflation data for a steer on U.S. interest rates. Brent crude dropped 64 cents to $76.80 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude fell 60 cents to $73.11. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, the Caribbean Examinations Council says it will be embracing artificial intelligence technology to help students. We have more in this report.
Caribbean Examination Council, or CXC, says while it does not favor the use of artificial intelligence technology, it believes students must continue to reignite themselves to keep their edge over any type of application. Manager of Research Insight and Products Innovation at CXC, Dr. Margaret Niles, spoke about the use of ChatGPT, which is a natural language processing tool driven by AI technology. This allows human-like conversations to assist in tasks such as composing emails, essays, and even code. She said CXC does not fear such technology, acknowledging that it can assist students in writing of their school-based assessment or SPAs, but she noted that students must be trained how to ethically use this technology.
There's so much external input into the SPA by the student that there's quite the ease of using ChatGPT to produce a finished product. But I think if we focus then on inculcating the soft skills, the ethical values, the understanding of what is right and wrong in terms of academic integrity, then we will go a long way.
Dr. Niles added that while AI technology such as ChatGPT makes life somewhat easier for students, they must be wary of maintaining their edge.
Because one thing we do learn is that ChatGPT or any AI is going to impact the labor market in such a way that we are going to lose certain types of jobs over the next couple of years. And we therefore have to, as I say, introduce the human part of the whole learning where we can keep the edge over the Chat GPT or any other AI application.
While speaking at the Caribbean Travel Forum on Tuesday, Prime Minister Mia Mottley issued a challenge to regional tourism players in Barbados to consider setting up a Caribbean tour operator company. Sharika Griffith filed this report.
Delivering the keynote address at the Caribbean Travel Forum, Prime Minister Mia Mottley called on hundreds of regional industry players in Barbados for the major conference to go after a bigger slice of the tourism pie.
Nothing should stop you from leaving this country without agreeing to form a major Caribbean tour operator.
She said stories from local hoteliers suggest they, in some cases, have to pay as much as 25% of the cost of the room to foreign tour operators, and there's no reason why such businesses can't be homegrown.
We've already established how easy it is to form companies. You already have the contacts. We've already established that technology allows you to have the demographic profiles and the capacity to reach people.
Pointing also to the use of technology, particularly artificial intelligence, the Prime Minister said the only thing stopping them from taking up her suggestion is the will and vision.
If this is vital to our lifeblood, how do we allow others to control whether the tap is turned on or off with respect to the flow?
Prime Minister Mottley believes the COVID-19 pandemic has presented the region's tourism sector with a chance to reset and recalibrate. While she notes the industry has been driven by foreign capital and airlift, she's hopeful that Caribbean nationals can be enfranchised to use what she calls significant amount of savings to invest in the sector. And acknowledging there's a global shortage of labor in the hospitality sector, Prime Minister Mottley says she's asked for a national conversation between labor and capital with respect to tourism and hospitality workers.
People need to be treated with respect. The notion of short-term contracts or long-term probation is no more acceptable to a worker in the hospitality industry as is merciless interest rates to the owners of the capital.
The Prime Minister has also suggested there are some uncomfortable topics which must be addressed, including that visitors of colour are still not treated in the same way as people who, according to her, traditionally fit what a tourist looks like. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
In the Bahamas, Attorney General Ryan Pinda says a recent ruling that children born out of wedlock to foreign women and Bahamian men are Bahamian citizens at birth means government will have to review existing citizenship legislation.
Prior to the ruling, the Constitution had been interpreted as providing a right to apply at age 18. The Attorney General saying Cabinet will discuss how it will evaluate the biological father of illegitimate children and discrimination against women passing on their citizenship.
We will discuss, and today we will discuss in Cabinet what measures are in place. One, to evaluate under Article 6 and the biological father in the case of illegitimate children. And secondly, the way forward with the remaining elements of discriminatory treatment. And primarily the discriminatory treatment when a Bahamian woman marries a foreign man and has that child outside of the country. But there are a couple of others, including matters with adopted children and the like that we're looking at. So hopefully we'll have some clear direction from Cabinet shortly.
The Attorney General was also asked if the bill will address the issue of children born in the Bahamas to foreign parents.
I think that the Constitution provides for that. They can.
In international news, London's Metropolitan Police have decided to take no further action against 6 people arrested on the coronation day of King Charles III on Saturday. But that decision has heightened scrutiny of new policing powers. Al Jazeera's Jonah Hall has more.
Though unquestionably in the minority, anti-monarchy voices were heard on Coronation Day, even by the King and Queen as the gold state coach passed Trafalgar Square. The police say they had no intention of silencing these protests and expressed regret for what happened earlier in the day, the arrest of 6 people preparing to take part. The anti-monarchy group Republic had prior permission to hold a protest, but as the group's leader and others unpacked their placards that morning, the police moved in, acting on the mere suspicion that protesters intended to lock on or attach themselves to objects or each other.
This is a demonstration of what happens when you have incredibly broad, overreaching and draconian legislation rushed through with limited scrutiny. And that creates new and expansive powers, including new offences of locking on, going equipped for locking on, expanded stop and search powers in the protest context, as well as protest banning orders. That together creates what one parliamentary committee has called a hostile environment for protest.
I am simply holding a banner in Westminster and I'm being arrested for my actions.
Dozens of arrests were made that day, some apparently arbitrary. The Metropolitan Police say they were acting on intelligence that different protest groups intended to disrupt the coronation. In deciding to take no further action against the Republic's 6, however, the police have essentially admitted they made a mistake. A Metropolitan Police statement says they searched the vehicle and, as well as a large number of placards, found items which at the time they had reasonable grounds to believe could be used as lock-on devices. The investigation has been unable to prove intent to use them to lock on and disrupt the event. Even through the cries of "Not my king," the coronation was an enormous event that passed largely without incident, for which, says the government, the police should be congratulated. As for the arrests, well, the response is to stress that the police are operationally independent of the government. Nothing, in other words, to do with us.
They make the decisions on the ground in the way that they see fit. That's the way that we've always done it. That's the right way to do it. It wouldn't be right for me to interfere with their operational decisions.
That's a line that is coming under increased scrutiny, especially since it was the government that rushed these controversial policing powers through Parliament just days before the coronation. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, London.
A New York jury has found that former U.S. President Donald Trump sexually abused a magazine writer in the 1990s. E. Jean Carroll has been awarded $5 million in damages. Al Jazeera Kristen Salumi reports.
Ms. Carroll, can we have a statement, please?
No comment from the writer E. Jean Carroll, moments after winning her lawsuit against Donald Trump. A jury of 6 men and 3 women found the former president liable for sexual abuse and defamation. The writer and former columnist testified for 3 days. She said the attack happened in the dressing room of a high-end department store, and while she couldn't recall the exact date, the incident changed her life. Trump declined several invitations to testify in his own defense. Instead, the jury saw a deposition he gave last year, during which he doubled down on some of the most controversial comments he made in the infamous Access Hollywood tape that first surfaced in 2016.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the...
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
The jury found a preponderance of evidence supported all of her claims except rape. The jury also found that Trump defamed Carroll when he called the case a total con job.
Trump's deposition was incredibly damaging. It was insulting to women. It belittled Ms. Carroll. I think it was just a disaster for the defendant.
2 other women who claimed Trump had sexually assaulted them around the same time as the attack on Carroll also testified. Trump denied all 3 attacks took place and quickly responded to the verdict on his social media platform, saying, "I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. This verdict is a disgrace." His lawyer said he would appeal.
This was a rape claim. It was a rape case all along, and the jury rejected that, but made other findings. So we'll obviously be appealing those other findings, but they rejected her rape claim, and she'd always claimed this was a rape case. So it's a little perplexing, but we move forward.
This case is just one of several legal issues facing the former president. He's also been criminally charged with falsifying business records. None of these cases preclude him from running for re-election, and so far, none seem to have hurt his standing in the polls. Kristen Salumi, Al Jazeera, New York.
Now, children making the long journey to Sudan's border with South Sudan.
In sports, the Jamaica Weightlifting Federation, JWF, now has full membership into the world governing body, the International Weightlifting Federation, IWF. The membership could see Jamaican weightlifters qualifying for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. A level playing field for all athletes is a goal for Caribbean Regional Anti-Doping Organization, CAR-RODA. And this was reiterated at their annual general meeting, which was hosted in Trinidad and Tobago on the weekend. Committing to that goal was the TTOC.
Trinidad and Tobago is proud of its association with CAR-RODA, the anti-doping organization, according to TNT Olympic Committee President Diane Henderson. And she made a pledge to continue upholding the code.
You have my word as president that we will continue to do all the necessary work to ensure compliance is maintained. Having developed relationships with the ministry through her Honorable Minister Kajou, I believe that the partnership formed will encourage all sporting stakeholders to practice safe sport and a level playing field for all our athletes.
That commitment will be demonstrated when we welcome the youth of the Commonwealth.
We're hosting the Caribbean Youth Games in August 4th to 11th. 7 sports, both islands, and we're extremely proud and excited to be able to execute all that is required to ensure that our athletes have a safe environment and learn. It's also a very big educational opportunity for the young athletes between 14 and 18 to learn more about anti-doping.
Wayne Cunningham, TTT Sport.
And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Remember, we are the People's Station.